The Python Show.
Hello and welcome to the Python Show. I'm your host, Mike Driscoll, and today I have a very special guest, Misra, who has a YouTube channel and usually talks about machine learning and topics in that nature. Welcome to the show, Misra.
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. Um, I usually like to begin our show by asking my guests to tell a little bit about themselves and your journey into programming.
Of course. So I'll just start with where I am right now. I work as a developer educator at Assembly AI, which involves
Mm-hmm.
making content on deep learning, AI, and any topic that is related to that. So this could be coding tutorials. This could be talking about the latest topics or a latest model that came out. And on top of that, I also have my own business, again, kind of attached to my own YouTube channel under my own name. And there I teach more data science things and more data science tutorials. And how I ended up in that position was I was working as a data scientist at a big firm as a consultant also.
Mm-hmm.
And after a while, we started taking some projects where we were teaching data science. And I realized that I actually really like teaching data science. And kind of one thing led to another. I started making some online tutorials. And yeah, over time, I started making them into YouTube videos. I also had a little podcast. And
Cool.
I ended up where I am today.
What made you decide to go into data science versus, some other tech field?
Yeah, that was a tricky choice, actually. When I was studying computer science back in college, it was not very clear to me what I wanted to do. I knew I didn't particularly want to be a programmer or
Mm-hmm.
a software developer. So I was exploring some different options and I took this artificial intelligence course. And I really loved the professor.
Cool.
And we also did some good projects together. And I realized, hey, this field has a lot of future. And around that time, data science, big data, data analysis was starting to be hyped up. And that's why I decided to do my master's in big data. And that's how I got into it.
Nice. Yeah, I think I kind of missed out. I missed out on the boat because I don't think they were talking about AI when I was in school. But
Oh,
I'm a little bit jealous of you young folk.
yeah. Yeah. It was just starting, luckily. I caught it in the beginning.
That's awesome. Well, how did you guys get it? How did you get into Python? I mean, I know a lot of data science is done in R and sometimes Java. So
Yeah.
why Python?
Well, actually, my first language I learned was C++, so something completely unrelated. And then I learned
Mm-hmm.
Java, because of some assignments that we had at school. And but for this artificial intelligence course that I just mentioned, we had to learn Python. And I remember feeling super scared because all of the other programming languages we learned through a class. So they would at least give
Mm-hmm.
a couple of weeks of instruction about the language itself. And this time the professor was like, okay, here's your assignment and use Python to do it. And I was like, wow, how am I going to do that? I don't know this language. And yeah, I worked on it for a bit and I realized it's actually very easy, especially if you know a language that's maybe a bit more complicated.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that was the beginning. And I realized that after that, there is no reason for me to use any other language from that point on because it's just so pleasant
Yeah.
to use Python.
Yeah, I realized that too. But my journey was more. You have to learn Python on the job. I wish I'd learned it in university. That would have been fun.
Yeah, yeah. Of course, there's a bit more higher stakes when you're doing it at the job.
Yeah, I was like, oh great, now I got to learn a new language and not get fired.
Nice.
Uh, so, what are some of the machine learning applications that you find most exciting right now?
When I first started, I think the thing that was the most interesting to me was recommender systems. So I thought it was really fascinating that we are all individuals, but at the end of the day, you can kind of bring groups of people together or analyze groups of people together that have similar interests and
Hmm.
in turn recommend them things that they might be interested in that they didn't even know. That was kind of the first thing that hooked me. But recently, I'm really excited about when you look at the recent developments, kind of generative AI, but not generative AI in a standalone way. I'm excited for its potential to support humans to do their jobs, and especially in creative fields. So, for
Okay.
example, this could be art, this could be maybe even movie making or even coding. The fact that we can get AI to do the simplest tasks, get a machine learning model to do the simplest task or the most tedious tasks, so we can work on more creative parts of the problem,
Hmm.
I think is very exciting.
So I think I know what generative AI is, but maybe you could explain that for people who don't know what that is.
Of course. So, generative AI is basically a new field, mostly under the umbrella of deep learning, where a model is able to create quote unquote novel information or data in a way. So
Mm.
this could be images, this could be text, or this could be code snippets. So, for example, maybe you describe what kind of code, what kind of function you want there to happen, and you can say, I want
Hmm.
a function that loops through a list and then finds the smallest item in the list and returns the index of that smallest item. And instead of coding it yourself, then this generative AI model will be able to write that maybe 4 or 5 lines of code for you. So
Okay.
then you will be skipping that part of the tedious part of doing the work.
Okay. Cool. That's pretty much what I was thinking, but I wanted to make
Mhm.
sure that everyone else was on the same wavelength as we are. So,
Mhm. Mhm.
so that kind of brings us to my next question, because I believe this is related, like Chat GPT and
Mhm.
Google Bard. How do you see AI changing your approach to creating content? Can it just do it for you, so to speak?
Yeah, I think definitely to a certain extent. There we are creating a lot of content, right? When you look at it, there are TikTok videos, Instagram videos, a lot of YouTube videos,
Hmm.
also blog posts, Twitter. People are creating threads, and now sometimes even long format text and little blogs. And most of them are not even very, how to say, not very novel, right? We get a lot of like 10 things I would do if I was this, or 5 things you need to know, but they are not actually adding a lot of value. And when you look at the content creation industry, it's mostly for marketing purposes. So there is a brand,
Hmm.
they want to be more well known. And what they do is they start generating blog posts, they start trying to rank on Google, for example, or they
Yeah.
start making maybe low quality YouTube videos. And I think ChatGPT and similar generative AI, again, models, can be helpful in creating content like that. I think like very helpful. Maybe they'll do like
Hmm.
50% of the work. You can actually ask ChatGPT, hey, create a article for me. This is the line of my business, and create an article that it has like 10 points, for example. And those
Yeah.
things do well SEO wise. So I think that would definitely be helpful. But I think in terms of creating content that is truly valuable and adds a new perspective to the world, we
Hmm.
might not be able to see that much. We might not be able to get that much help from ChatGPT or similar models.
Okay. I could see that. And I keep seeing though on Twitter, and I know it's just the AI people who've suddenly cropped up, but they're like content creators are gonna go away, in this year because
Yeah,
now ChatGPT can create videos,
yeah,
and I'm like, is that really true? I'm pretty sure it's not.
yeah.
Have
I
you?
mean, maybe we will end up in a point in the future where it can truly do everything. And yeah, maybe we won't need content creators anymore, but I would assume that is going to be at least another 30 years or so,
Yeah,
because you still need the human creativity in there, is my.
yeah. That's kind of my feeling too. I'm like, you still have to have someone prompt it, and even then, the output that I've seen so far has not been that great. So,
No, exactly. And it's just actually the output is just a mashup of all the input that it's been given. So you
hmm,
feed it all the blog posts that has ever been written, maybe on the internet, and it just mashes them up and then realizes what the patterns are and then gives you something. But that would also end. If you never create something new, if you say, okay, we don't need content creators anymore, that model is just going to keep creating the same thing over and over and over again with a
yeah,
very similar language. So yeah, at the end of the day, you still need the new creative power from humans.
that's very true. So, I mean, this is kind of related, but are you using AI yourself to help with your content creation?
Sometimes, yeah, I do actually use it, especially if I am having like a little writer's or YouTuber's block and I cannot
Mm-hmm.
think of an idea to make a YouTube video about, or, if I want to write some tweets and I'm struggling with like, oh, what might be interesting to people. It's kind of like a nice little summary, even like kind of like an analytics tool, because it has
Yeah.
been fed all the past tweets and everything that's been out there, and it
Mm-hmm.
just kind of shows you kind of language would be um what kind of language would be perceived well by people, or what kind of ideas. Like, you could tell it, hey, give me 10 ideas. I'm a data science YouTuber, give me 10 ideas for titles of viral videos. And maybe you
Okay.
will not use a single video idea that it gave you, but maybe you will combine a couple points and then make up your own idea, or just maybe let it inspire you in a way. So that's how
Mm-hmm.
I've been using it so far.
Yeah, I've used it similarly for like Pandas. I'm not very good at Pandas yet, which is a Python package for those of you who don't know. But I'm not good at it. So I asked it, what give me like 10 tweets on that topic, and then I can go research the code that it
Uh-huh.
generates.
Right. Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. I think it's very helpful, and there are many. That's a very creative use, actually, and I think there are many creative ways of using it that maybe we haven't realized yet.
Yeah, I think the thing that I want to warn listeners of, though, is sometimes the content it gives you, especially code, doesn't work. So make
Mhm.
sure you test the code before you go posting it, because you'll get called out on it if you post a bunch of broken code.
Exactly.
Anyway,
Exactly.
a lot of people will say you can create a working website with ChatGPT, but I'm not sure I'm convinced because I've asked to do
I
really
highly
simple
doubt that.
things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I highly doubt that.
Anyway, do you think AI will reduce the need for like writing courses or books, etc.?
I don't think so, because so far, like I said, what it's creating is very superficial. Even though
Mm-hmm.
it is very impressive how it can create actual full sentences that make sense, even paragraphs of text that has a nice flow and you can read it and it makes sense and everything. Uh, at the end of the day, it is kind of like a cloning device. It's a smart cloning device. It cannot create its own ideas. So I think it could be a good starting position when you want to learn something new. But I don't
Mm-hmm.
think we can rely on AI only, for now, at least, to learn something from scratch. Because books and school or courses, online courses, are
Yeah.
created by people to kind of teach you something systematically, so there is not going to be any gaps. You're going to get the most important information. Yes, from
Mm-hmm.
instructor to instructor, it can change what they covered. The scope might be different, but at the end of the day, at least you're going to get what you're promised. But I think with an AI tool, at the end of the day, these tools are statistical tools and they're never going to be 100% correct. So there is
Mm-hmm.
no guarantee that the information you're getting is comprehensive or complete.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I think especially from a beginner's perspective, you don't know what questions to ask. Even Google, how are you going to ask AI? You know,
Definitely.
what's the next topic that I need to learn about after I learn the basic syntax?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know. Not even every book teaches you that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's definitely tricky. But it's a good starting point. If you don't know anything about a topic, I think it could be interesting to just ask ChatGPT, "Hey, I want to learn about React programming language.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, what are the key topics that I need to master?" And then maybe it'll give you a list of be a starting point for you.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I need to try the internet version of GPT and see if it can see what it can give me, because I'd be kind of curious to see like what are the top what does ChatGPT think are the top 10 Python books
Hmm.
or the
Hmm.
top 10 C++
Yeah.
books. It'd be interesting to see, does
Yeah.
that line up with what Amazon says are the top 10 selling
Yeah,
ones?
exactly. And what people should also remember, though, and keep in mind that when these models were last updated, because I think the public version of
Mhm.
ChatGPT has a cutoff point around 2021, if I'm not mistaken. If you pay for it, the paid version has data from more recent years. But
Hmm.
if you use the free version, the list of books you will get will be kind of outdated.
Yes. Yeah, I was specifically referring to the version that allows ChatGPT to access the internet, because I'm just
Mm.
curious what it will be able to do.
Oh, I don't think I've
But
heard about that one. So it has direct access to internet, so the current data, the latest
yeah,
data.
I think it's a beta feature in ChatGPT 4, I believe.
All right, that sounds interesting.
You have to specifically enable it. But yeah, I
Nice.
haven't I haven't played with it at all, so
Uh-huh. Sounds cool.
it does. I need to try it.
Well, let us know.
Yeah, I will. So let's see, where was I? Do you believe that software developers would need to go back to school if they wanted to transition to data science?
Yeah, my initial reaction would be no.
Okay.
When I look at my personal experience, I also studied to become a software engineer. You know, at school in my
Mhm.
bachelor's, they mainly trained us to be software engineers, and I did take some lessons during my master's under the big data engineering umbrella about data science, but it
Mhm.
was not actually as machine learning, statistics, or AI oriented as I expected it to be. So at the end, I ended up still learning a lot about engineering, dealing with big data sets and
Okay.
databases, etc. And my transition to data science happened more organically when I started my internship.
Hmm.
And during the internship, I told my supervisors that I wanted to do data science projects. And that's kind of how I got into it. So I just kind of took online courses, I talked to
Yeah.
them, they helped me. And honestly, even after I started working as a data scientist, I would not have called myself a data scientist looking back. And I kind of learned
Mhm.
at the job. And that's why that kind of leads me to believe that you don't actually need, especially if you're a software engineer, you don't actually need that extra schooling or at least formal education to become a data scientist,
Mhm.
because you have the coding skills, which are like one of the most important skills to have. And the next thing
Mhm.
is that mindset shift of changing from programming a piece of software and you know how it's going to run, and then you press run, and yeah, maybe there might be some bugs, but you designed the whole thing. Then shifting to this other perspective or the mindset where you write a piece of code, but that's not it. You also need to feed it the data. And
Mhm.
the thing that comes out of it is not something that is going to work 100% of the time. So once you can do
Mhm.
that mindset shift, luckily, maybe with some YouTube videos, online courses, etc., I think you'll be good to go. So I think it's
Hmm.
very possible to do the shift from software engineer to data science quite casually, maybe on the job, or maybe by taking a couple of months of doing some data science projects yourself.
Yeah. That was always my feeling on the topic, but I always seem to get a lot of pushback when I post questions like that,
Mm,
on social media. They're like, "Oh no, you have to go get a degree in that." And I'm like, "I'm pretty sure I don't." But
yeah, yeah, no, I don't think so either. I mean, I understand why people think so. Definitely, I think so. When I talk to my students about this, what I tell them is it really depends on what you see yourself doing. If you see yourself as someone who is working at a research lab and help create new machine learning algorithms, a new model,
mhm.
then yes, you probably need the formal education, you need the PhD, and you need extreme mathematical understanding of what's happening
Mhm.
everywhere. That's a different line of work. But if you're mainly thinking of being a data analyst or data scientist, or maybe even a machine learning engineer, then I think the education you can get yourself with the resources that are out there today would be enough.
Yeah, exactly. That's what my impression has been, and the people I've talked to have also said that unless you're designing your own algorithms
Hmm.
or fixing or enhancing a current algorithm, you don't need all that extra math.
No, you really don't. It's kind of, it's exciting to learn that math, and
Mhm.
so it's kind of a shame that you don't need it day to day. But yeah, that's the reality of it. You really don't.
Yeah, I mean, heck, I don't even need a lot of the calculus I learned in college or the
No,
statistics. You know,
no,
I
no.
liked learning it at the time,
Yeah.
but I don't need it. It's
Definitely.
funny.
I mean, maybe we needed it, but because we already had this knowledge, it made our lives easier on some topics.
Perhaps.
and we didn't even realize it. I think someone who comes from a completely non-technical background, who has not studied
Hmm.
math at all, would have a harder time. So,
Yeah, I think the mathematical topics, because they're abstract, they help you get ready for the
mm,
abstractness of engineering.
definitely, definitely agree.
So let's see, and I think the other thing that I found helpful with mathematics is you kind of see how the computer thinks from a mathematical perspective as
Mhm.
well.
Yeah, exactly. That's
And
that's
yeah.
very interesting. That also, I think, helps you understand computers a little bit better and programming a little bit better. Yeah, those are all just tiny mindset shifts, I think, along the way that
Hmm.
help you end up at a point where you can become a good programmer.
Yeah, I'll mention this. I mentioned it in the past too, but when I was learning programming, I didn't get it for like my first like 2 years of my computer programming
Yeah.
training at university. I'm like, I've memorized everything. I'm a grade A student, but I don't understand what I'm doing. And
Yeah.
then the third year it finally clicked, and I'm
Uh-huh.
like, now I know what's going on. It's kind of like the Matrix, It's like,
Yeah.
I get it.
No, definitely. I also felt that at times.
So yeah, if anyone is feeling frustrated, it gets better. You just have to keep practicing.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So I think we're getting close to the end. Let's ask my final question. What topics in data science do you find are the hardest to teach to your students?
Kind of similar to what we talked about, actually. So far, what I've seen that people struggle with the most from the feedback that I get is the methodology of data science, especially if you're switching from a
Mm,
different career to data science. Data science is generally quite methodological, is that the right word? There is a
yes.
methodology to it, and it has certain steps that you need to follow, and even though it's quite flexible, there are still some steps that needs to happen one after another. For example, you get the data, you need to do some data understanding, you need to do some data cleaning, some exploration, and these things kind of happen one after another, but one can come before the other, or maybe you do some data cleaning, realize some other problems, do a bit more exploring. So these steps, even though it makes sense on a paper, when you start doing it for a real life data set, it gets really complicated and it gets really
Mm,
messy. And that has been the hardest thing I've seen people struggle with. And also, it has been the hardest thing to kind of get across. I think
hmm.
mainly because it comes with experience too. Like, there is part of this job that you just expose yourself to it and you struggle. It's kind
Yeah.
of like, you search for bugs for so many years, you start getting you get better at finding those bugs. Kind of like that, you need to struggle with the real life data, which is messy and hard to work with, and then you get
Hmm.
better at it over time. And that's why it is harder to teach that one-on-one from a teacher student perspective, but it's more like I need to give you enough motivation to keep doing it so that you can learn it yourself.
Yep, that makes sense. Awesome. Well, I want to thank you so much for being a part of our show today, Misra. It was great to meet you and
Yeah,
have you on the show.
thank you, it was great talking to you.
Thank you so much. And to all our listeners out there, I hope you all check out Misra's content. She's got a lot of great content on YouTube. And I believe you have a website too, don't you?
Yes,
That people can check out?
misraturp.com, where you can find a bit more free resources on Python, not Python, sorry, Pandas, so more data science related,
Hmm.
also some deep learning stuff. And also, I have a course on data science for people who are just starting data science called Hands on Data Science.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely check out her content. It looks amazing.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we'll talk to you another time, perhaps. In the meantime, I'm going to sign off.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thank you.
Yeah.
The Python Show.